how much has this open border affected the drug issues that America has had?
If you just gave me a guesstimation, said put it in numbers, I would say it's increased by over 1,000%. The cartels put this into place, so now the cartels and Purdue, they're not working together, but the cartels, through their technology, have looked and go, this is what the U.S. customers are wanting. What can we do for this? That's how heroin got into place.
Welcome to Culture Shift. Today, we have guest Bill Loucks. Bill, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bill has 21 years of law enforcement experience. He retired from the Metro Nashville, Tennessee Police Department, and throughout his time with Metro PD, Bill has written more than 800 search warrants and been involved in more than 1,000 search warrant executions. He has been an instructor with the North Carolina Department of Justice, where he instructs narcotics and human trafficking related courses. Bill has instructed more than 13,000 individuals on controlled substances, gangs, and human trafficking. He has instructed international, federal, state, and local law enforcement and is also a North Carolina general instructor, North Carolina specialized explosives and hazardous materials instructor, and a specialized police instructor certified for gangs, and Maryland instructor certified for basic narcotics. He's also spent 2 years as North Carolina's senior investigator for Hope for Justice. And he's also a staff member of the International Narcotics Interdiction Association. Bill, that's a lot of stuff there. Let's start today talking a bit about the issue of drugs in our culture. I've been with EMS, I've been with police departments. One officer told me that 70% of their calls in that department are drug related. So let's begin by helping people understand exactly where we are at. There was a statistic that came out just for Catawba County a few years ago that we are ranked in the top of opioid addiction and abuse in the country per capita. So let's talk a little bit about that and help people understand exactly where we're at.
So 2 things driving the current drug epidemic right now. Number 1, opioids, and then technology. And a lot of people are like, well, opioids, why is this a buzz topic? Why do we get fentanyl? How did this start? And if you look back, this all starts with the illicit marketing scheme by Big Pharma in the late 90s, when they were losing a patent on a particular pain management medication built for cancer. And now it was about to go where people could have non-name brand formulations of it. They brought in OxyContin into the scene, and this came in the late 90s. And their representatives started going out to pharmacies, doctors' offices, and started putting this basically into place. And they were representing it as like a miracle drug that was not addictive like physicians had previously been taught. A lot of doctors didn't want to prescribe opioids because medically it had been shown that there was a high rate of addiction. Well, when Purdue Pharma brought it out through their pharmacy reps to the doctors and pharmacists, they basically told them, hey, the rate of addiction is less than 1% on this formulation.
I know better than that.
Yes, and everybody, you fast forward to now, 2025, and you go, that is not accurate at all. So
let me pause you right there. So what you're saying is our current opioid crisis actually began with prescription drug from Big Pharma.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's always been addiction. Addiction has plagued it as much as since we've had the sin between Adam and Eve in the garden, and just things kind of went off the rails at that point in time. Humans have been addicted to something, whether it's caffeine, food, something. But when it comes to opioids, that creates a whole separate level of addiction. So we started putting a lot of this medication into place, and a lot of doctors started going, hey, my patients are having issues. They're coming in and requesting this more often, and they're saying they're not getting enough pain relief from this. Well, what we were seeing when a patient would come in and say, you prescribed me 30 days of oxycodone or OxyContin at the time, and I came to you 20 days later saying I'm out of it because I had to double up on the medication. And all of a sudden, the doctors weren't seeing that that was actually doctor shopping. So when the pharmaceutical reps would come in and try to resell OxyContin to the doctors would go, look, my patients are saying they're not getting enough pain relief from this, and they're coming to me trying to get a refill earlier. The pharmacy rep said, well, that's because you need to double up on it for it to actually work. It works better when you double up on it. Well, the problem is when you double up on that medication, instead of somebody taking one tablet every 6 to 8 hours as per needed for pain, they were writing prescriptions now take one tablet every 2 to 3 hours as per needed. So we were a nation fed by addiction at that point in time. And to look at it, what the U.S. fits statistically, I think the last numbers that I looked at, the United States accounts for approximately 5% of the world's population. But yet we are consuming more than 67% of all, well, more than 50% of all of the pharmaceuticals manufactured worldwide, non-opioid. So that's your daily maintenance medication. That could be your asthma medication.
Blood pressure.
Blood pressure.
Yeah. Cholesterol.
Anything, a Z-Pack, steroidal pills, something like that. 5% of the world's population consuming more than 50% of all of the pharmaceuticals worldwide, but we're also consuming more than 67% of all the opiate or narcotic, what we call narcotic-based medications that are manufactured worldwide.
Now, is that because we are just prescribing it more often? Because everybody has pain around the world. So why is it like that here in the U.S. versus other countries?
Big Pharma.
Okay.
Deep pockets. If you look at this, we don't have issues with Big Pharma lobbyists in, say, the UK, in Australia, other countries. We have that here. So there is a deep group of individuals that are profiting from this. So as we rose to this level of addiction from the opioids, we realized, and more specifically Florida kind of brought the whole snapshot of the level of addiction together, because in Florida, we started seeing a lot of what we call pill mills. So a doctor could set up shop and start to see patients in places that weren't an actual doctor's office. They would be in the lobby of like a hotel, the Radisson. They would be in the Starbucks lobby seeing patients, not even doing a physical examination. And it's not Florida.
Just prescribing.
Just prescribing.
Yeah,
you would
okay.
sit down and say, hey, I'm having really bad issues with my back. And doctor would be like, oh, that's awful. Here, cash only. Okay? Cash only. That's another clue. Not accepting insurance. Not doing hands-on physical examinations. These are all things we would call red flag indicators if I was doing a drug diversion case, meaning I'm looking at a potential illicit prescriber, what everybody would classify as a dirty doctor. Okay? The reason we had that high volume of these pain clinics in Florida was due to the fact that the way their laws were set up for prescribers, it wasn't as restrictive. We realized that because people were coming from New York, Michigan, West Virginia, Chicago, South Dakota, North Dakota, and they would go to Florida, especially in Central Florida, and you could see 10 to 15 doctors a day. And there was no databases internally in the state of Florida that said, hey, Bill just went to Dr. Jones to talk about his plantar fasciitis, got a 30-day prescription of OxyContin, and then went 1/2 block down the road to see Dr. Smith to talk about his chronic neck pain with his degenerative disc disease, where he got another prescription for oxycodone or OxyContin for 30 days. We realized this as a nation and said, whoops, we've got an issue. So we started putting prescribing limits into place and databases into place. And these databases were basically state databases where a doctor within Florida or a doctor here in North Carolina could see where Mark has went through 7 doctors in the last 2 days and gotten prescriptions for OxyContin, okay? Now that's inputted into a system, and that system says Mark's doctor shopping, potentially. We need to look at it. Then it tied in the pharmacist, and the pharmacists are basically our stopgap. They are the end of that chain because they are the person that actually takes that medication, puts it in a bottle, and puts it into your hand. So because we put these databases into place, it reduced the availability of these pills. It didn't reduce our addiction. People still needed that opioid medication. It got so bad that the cartels were hearing the request for pills in Mexico. And we know this from individual training that I have attended in interviews with former cartel lieutenants, like for the Arellano Felix organization, former kingpins from like the Sinaloa cartel. And you could hear them talking about their stories in about 2012 and 13, where they were hearing a request, 2009 actually, 10, a large request on both sides of the border via their plaza bosses. A plaza boss is a manager, basically. They were hearing the request for the pills. They could not put the pills into place. So what they did, they went to their research and development people. And a lot of people are like, are you saying cartels have research and development people? Absolutely. It's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of operation that they make. And we, just by our rate of addiction, we're their largest customer in the world. So their research and development people say, look, that OxyContin, those pills that everybody is wanting, that's an opioid medication, okay? It's basically a synthetic opioid, and it's basically kind of like what heroin would be. If we put heroin into place, heroin is 2 times stronger than that actual OxyContin pill. We can control it. We can derive and get all the raw opium that we need from Southeast Asia and convert it into heroin, place that into the U.S. It's going to be 2 times stronger. It's going to hit on the same opioid, your opioid uptake receptors, and we will take and basically nationwide, we'll control the price and bring it anywhere from $70 to $100 a gram. At the time, in the height of our pill epidemic going on, an average user was using, the most sought after pill was a 30 milligram OxyContin pill, which is now OxyContin. And a user would use anywhere from 6 to 8 of those pills a day. And they were paying $1 a milligram. So each pill essentially was $30. If I'm chewing up 6 of those a day, 8 of those a day, I can spend anywhere up to $240 a day. If they put heroin in place, 2 times stronger, and my high is lasting longer, and I'm only paying $70 to $100 a gram. From a business perspective, it made sense.
So 2 questions. As it relates to the cartels, are you saying that most of the drug problem that we have, I know we have a prescription drug problem, but much of this is coming from the cartels in Central and South America?
It is.
Okay. Would you say that the acceleration of this drug issue that we have had probably started somewhere around 2008, 9, 10?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As it started going from pills into heroin. And
now help me here, because I'm thinking about the person listening. So are you saying people have transitioned from the pills now into the heroin?
Yes, because it is what is available on the market. We still have people that are straight pill users, but if I take a snapshot throughout just my experience, and I can tell you, I know statistically, and anybody can do a FOIA request, a Freedom Information Act request. Throughout my career, I've arrested 1,444 individuals. I was part of a hot narcotics team where we were doing a lot of work, basically 24/7. And out of hundreds and hundreds of interviews that I would see of my heroin users, they started their transition, their progression to heroin from pills. So 95% of my previous pill users then became heroin users. And that was where two worlds connected. That was the direct correlation from Purdue Pharma, the illicit marketing scheme. We can see that they've been charged. There's multiple payouts, billions of dollars of payouts. Yeah. This has been proven. So this isn't like a conspiracy theory at this point in time. The cartels put this into place, so now the cartels and Purdue, they're not working together, but the cartels, through their technology, have looked and go, this is what the U.S. customers are wanting. What can we do for this? That's how heroin got into place. The research development people put that into place.
So for those that aren't aware of the effects of certain kinds of drugs, what is the physical effect of a pill versus taking a shot of heroin?
A pill has a time-release formula in it. So if I take it, I'm going to feel some euphoric effects, and whatever the effects are, the pain dulling, the reduction in pain, if you actually legitimately have pain, you're going to become a little bit lethargic, but you'll get a little bit of stimulation from it. You'll kind of, the best way to explain it, and I've had multiple people say that, they said kind of when you take an OxyContin pill, that's like a 30 milligram, it's the equivalent of drinking 3 or 4 beers at first on an empty stomach. And drinking them really fast. You kind of get that, yeah, this is kind of a nice feeling. But it's also like a lethargic, almost relaxing. It kind of numbs them to where they're kind of like, okay, this is nice. I'm comfortable. It feels like a little bit of a warm blanket going over them. When they get the heroin's 2 times stronger. So it's more of a reaction, if there's not fentanyl in it, it's more of a reaction of that same euphoria, but it's like, yes, I feel good. Instead of that 3 to 4 beer feeling on an empty stomach, I equivalent it to like 6 to 9 beers. And that heavy warm blanket that just coats them now feels like it's 10 heavy warm blankets where they're just like, yes, this is nice. I've never seen a heroin user, somebody who just shot heroin, injected, smoked it, go straight in the gym and start bench pressing. Okay? They're always kind of just relaxed, hanging out, mellow, slow in conversation, maybe not a little bit straight in conversation, just a little slurred speech, just like I'm doing. Mm-hmm. That's the effects that they're feeling. So it's very, very addictive. And when we talk about how fast these trends happen, just from my previous agency, if I look at a snapshot of our seizures, in my area in Tennessee, you could see between 2000 to January 1st of 2010, we had seized in middle state of Tennessee, seized approximately 2.5 kilos of heroin for the whole mid-state out of a 10-year period of time. January 1st of 2010 to January 1st of 2011, now a 1-year period of time, we'd seized over 130 kilos of heroin. You could see nationwide, even here in North Carolina, the boom happened late 2009, early 2010, and you started seeing spikes of heroin come into place. And everybody's like, why? It's because that is what the cartels were putting in. They are dictating what your basically addictive substance is and the availability of it. So if you look at a snapshot of 2010, late 2009 here in North Carolina, you could see a boom and explosion of heroin. And you could see it out at the coast where the ports are at. Because we had a whole whirlwind of stuff going on. Everybody's like, well, why the ports? I thought, why? Yeah. And that's when the cartels were also changing their shipment methods because they were shotgun blasting everything up through the states that touch Mexico. California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas.
Right. So how there's a lot of debate about Some people call them undocumented. The actual terminology is illegal. How much has this open border affected the drug issues that America has had?
If you just gave me a guesstimation, said put it in numbers, I would say it's increased by over 1,000%. Okay. There was no enforcement down there, and it wasn't due to people not doing their job.
Right.
It was administration saying no longer go there.
Right.
So it was wide open and brazen. And I can hide dope on anywhere, on anybody anywhere. I could I could walk through your building at any point in time as we're sitting here. I could put 2 to 3 kilos on you and hide it throughout your body, sew it in your pants, put it in your shoes, tape it to your body and stuff like that. It would never show, okay? So throughout technology, they figured out with the advancement of pushing and shotgun blasting in, instead of 200 to 300 people maybe a day through a couple ports or areas of entry, now they were pushing 80 to 150,000 people a day. A day. How many people out of 150,000 people, how many people can you actually do a physical hands-on search of?
Right, yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
It's impossible. So, and the administrations were saying, just let them in. That's why we were seeing the increase in the volume. If you were in a vehicle and you were crossing the border points, there wasn't as many vehicles moving into secondaries for inspections. And if you go to secondary, that means that initial officer is saying, something isn't right. I need to do some further investigation to make sure there's nothing illegal entering into our country, and this person doesn't have nefarious means for
And it's not
coming in
because
here.
those officers didn't want to do their job. They were basically told not to do their job.
I'm going to be straight up with you. It was elected officials. Okay?
Yeah, right.
You can see it. There's a fight on the far left and the far right, and I'm going to compare it to this the best way we do. This is a unique position, but it's basically good versus evil at this point in time. Okay, there's no other way to put this. So we see the spike in heroin hit, and everybody's like, well, why the ports? How did this come into place? Well, technology. Because the cartels started looking at this again and going, okay, we're shotgun blasting all these cars through California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and statistically, in the U.S., we are theoretically only capturing about 10% of what's coming into the U.S. via those border points. Now we started seeing the cartels started shipping some of that and routing some of their shipments through the Horn of Africa, mixing it in shipping containers on those big shipping vessels and stuff like that. And it wouldn't leave Mexico with it, but en route, as those boats were making their trip to like the Horn of Africa or back, on the waterways, the cartels would attach themselves to the boats, attach themselves to seafarers, the guys and gals that are actually employed there, and actually making them put the dope into these loads, replacing the seals. And when these boats come in, there's like more than 1,000 of these shipping containers in each vessel. You can only take a random sample and maybe say, all right, give me 7 or 10 of those.
So we are going to talk in another episode about the human trafficking piece of this.
Oh,
but
yeah.
that is why in those shipping containers, some of these people, there's people in them. For the cartels, for those that are listening, this is not about trying to get people high. This is simply a business transaction.
This is a business module with a perverse spin on it that works.
Now, why, from your perspective, would elected officials tell those responsible for taking care of this on the border, why would they tell them not to do their job?
Best way to explain it goes back to good versus evil. The good will be the bad will be the good. If you look at this in biblical. In my perspective, these are just things that are signs of the times. Okay, there's no reason for you to say just open up the border and let everybody come in here, especially when you look at how many children, unaccompanied alien children, hundreds of thousands, not like 20 or 50, hundreds, thousands, coming into the U.S., No parent. Somebody comes in to claim them and says, I'm going to be their sponsor. And the children disappear. Well, we're seeing on the backside that the cartels are utilizing those kids as a cover, because in some of those cases, they've actually captured some biometrics on those kids. And biometrics meaning like fingerprints or a little bit of DNA, like a swab or something like that. And in one particular case, there was I actually teach it specifically in one of my classes, and I got this straight from people at the border that are doing this job. A child entered, he was a 7-year-old boy, entered into the U.S. via San Ysidro, so San Diego, California. He's already coming into the U.S., has a group of sponsors come in. For some reason, they capture biometrics because they're not capturing a lot of biometrics on the juveniles. 7 months later, this same child is now crossing in via McAllen, Texas, with another group of people that are his quote-unquote parents now, looking like a family unit, and they're like, and the kid has a different name, different date of birth. When they pull up the picture and the biometrics, fingerprints and everything, it's the same kid that's 7 months earlier.
This is highly painful to even think about in terms of what's happening to kids.
It is.
Would you say that this problem for the average American looking at this is way worse than anybody has ever been able to publicly articulate?
Yes. What you're seeing in the news is a very watered down version of it. What police, law enforcement, the brothers and sisters out there on the border, they're seeing the actual reality of what's going on, the bodies coming in and out. And imagine for them when they look at a child and go, I know this kid's going to disappear. A child. Okay, I have young kids. I have everybody from 19 down to 3. Yeah. And I look at, I can't imagine my 3-year-old sending my 3-year-old into this just to disappear somewhere into the unknown, into the U.S.
So, a couple of things. I'm an average American. I'm living here in North Carolina. Let's answer briefly 2 questions. What do I need to look for in my neighborhood or my business or my church, even, to be aware? Because most people, like, they're not even aware. What would I need to look for? Number 2, what could I do to help?
Well, the first thing to look for is several things. If somebody is young, somebody, say if it's a young kid, this new child that has popped in maybe to a business, is this child not comfortable with the person that they're with? Meaning if it's a 2-3-year-old kid and they're coming into like a daycare or your church or your business like Walmart or something like that, CVS, Walgreens, or your medical facility and urgent care or something like that, is that child comfortable with the individual that they're with? Like a child naturally will be comfortable with mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. Is this child very distant and they just won't even look at that person? They're in fear. It's one thing if a kid gets in trouble and they just got their butt popped, but it's different when you just look at that and go, that's unnatural. You know, that could be a telltale sign of abuse, but it could also be that child has no idea who they're with.
Are there any activities that would be obvious to law enforcement, but not so obvious unless I was looking for it, that I could look around as it relates to drugs and other things in my neighborhood and stuff, say, something's off here?
Yeah, new people showing up, multiple people at a residence, and that's not unheard of with people coming in from Central and South America, you know, that are coming in like labor industries, construction, landscaping. You'll see it a lot of times where a lot of people work for a particular company, and there'll be, say, 10 to 15 people living in a small trailer. But all the work trucks that show up have the same name on them, you know, whether it's AB Construction or Tim's Landscaping Company or something like that. But if you see people coming in, new faces coming in, and then boom, disappearing. If you suspected something, here's the number one indicator, and this has been proven, and we show this actually in some cases in our training. What you would have suspected is a drug house, like people kind of in and out, or you see unusual activity. A car pull up, somebody jumps out of a car, they have a huge duffel bag, like one of those big hockey-sized bags. Mm-hmm. They run into a house, they stay in there for about a minute, 2, 3, 4 minutes, boom, they leave and they are empty-handed, or they come out with another bag, throw that bag in the car, and boom, they leave. And you don't see many people maneuver around the house. You don't see the standard activity, what you would see at most houses. Somebody leaving for work, coming home from work, somebody leaving to go pick up the kids at school or take the kids to the corner of the school bus. Some things kind of look like a drug house. Now, instead, these drug houses, what used to be stash houses, now are human trafficking stash houses. So that car, when it pulls up now, the trunk will open, say it's a Honda Accord. In a one recorded video that we have, 11 people get out of the Honda Accord. 11 people. A person of reasonable caution doesn't jam somebody in the trunk of their car. We're going to call that a clue for the police world. Okay? You see that? Report it. What can you do? Report that automatically. Mm. But at the house, the door would open real quick. Those 11 people rush in. The door would close. Within 3 to 5 minutes later, boom, another 9 to 11 people would come out. It's different than the 11 that just bailed out of that car. Another 9 to 11 people get out, stuffed in their car, boom, trunk closes, car drives off. It's a human trafficking stash house.
So let me ask you one more question, because we're going to do another episode here specifically on human trafficking. Are we getting a hold of any of this? Or are we still so overwhelmed that we're just swimming and trying to deal with what we can deal with?
I don't believe we'll ever get a hold of it. And a lot of people are like, well, why can't we? Well, let's look back at a few just big cases. Let me give you a hypothetical situation. Say I have a son named maybe Hunter, and maybe his laptop ends up at a repair shop somewhere, and there's videos of him maybe or maybe not discussing sexual pay for transactions with somebody and him, bribing them. Hypothetical situation, not saying that actually happened. And say my son Hunter has the actual checks written to a group that is proven and been charged with being an Eastern European human trafficking group. An actual canceled check that actually passed through a legitimate legal financial institution, meaning a bank, and we have the actual returns. Probably be just Russian disinformation, I guess. Wouldn't be real. Look at the Epstein case. Ghislaine Maxwell, okay? Not a conspiracy theorist, but look, Ghislaine Maxwell was prosecuted with human trafficking. Numerous victims, okay? Why are these victims? It's one thing to protect the victims, but if there was a victim, that meant there was a buyer, meaning somebody who actually paid or did some nefarious acts, had sex with these individuals via methods of force, fraud, coercion, however Epstein was doing that. She has been convicted. I'm going to say that has been proven at this point in time. She has exhausted all of her appeals decisions, all right? Why are we not seeing the buyers? Those are actually co-conspirators. This is what we call a co-conspirator. Why? Well, because they're high-end individuals. Will we ever get a handle on it? No. We can just recognize it. And then fentanyl plays into the whole spin once we move from heroin into that, and then we start bringing in China on top of this. So at the end of these 2 episodes, you're going to see 3 realms of evolution between Purdue, Pharma, the cartels, which are now called transnational criminal organizations, and then China, how all 3 feed into this.
Which is one reason why the church has such a responsibility with the gospel of Jesus Christ, and really in the history, particularly of America, of spiritual awakenings that invade culture and shift culture. If we don't have some supernatural help here, we're already overwhelmed. We're not going to get to where we need to go.
Correct.
Our guest is Bill Loucks, and we are talking about the drug epidemic here in America. But I want you to look at the next episode, because we're going into the subject of human trafficking and what is happening in America and around the world right now. Thank you for being with us, and we will see you again on Culture Shift.